Okay, now we're going to talk about ICANN and DNS resolution, and this is a section that is important. You need to understand it, but you're not going to have any specific questions about this on the test. We've already talked about part of this. This actually is from the ICANN archives. In the 1980s, there were 7 generic top-level domains. So a GTLD is a generic top-level domain. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Okay, and since we don't need the notes, I can make that a little bit bigger. All right, so the generic TLDs, com, edu, gov, int, mil, net, and org. I'm looking at my list, and I almost got them in that order, which was weird. So we had that for a long, long time. And then in 2000, we got .biz and info and name and pro, plus arrow, co-op, and museum. Now, there was a lot of controversy about this because if we do alternate TLD or alternate DNS route, I could alternate, let's do DNS route. Okay, so these are alternate routes. So these are not government ICANN sanctioned DNS routes. These are ones, when they talk about the black web or the dark web, websites that you can't normally get to, this is one of the things they're talking about. So these are not all bad. And in fact, for a long time, there was an Australian route, the Pacific route, there was an Atlantic route. I don't know that either of those are still in use, but this is just a bunch of people got together and said, hey, we're going to host some DNS names, and we're going to have some web pages, and people can pay us. And typically, like, some of them were free. At one point, .fun and .funny were both available, and you could have a free registered website. So just be somebody would, they'd take a donation, but they would host that, and you would have to have in your DNS configuration. So the question comes up, how do we do this? So we go to IP version 4, and we go to advanced and DNS, and then the DNS server addresses, and then we would add the IP address of one of these alternate routes. And if you add the address to the alternate route, and you always wanted it to be below the default, so you'd put in 8888 as the primary, and then you could put in a secondary 8844, whatever combination, whoever you wanted to use as DNS. You could put those as the first two as the standard and an alternate, and then you would put this down on the list. So when you went to scottis.funny, and it would go to Google's server, DNS servers, and it would fail in the alternate, because you get 2 of those. Then it would go to the next on the list, which was your alternate route DNS, and then it would actually find an IP address. It would resolve, and it would report back. So this is how you do it, and that happened for a long time. Now, this became an issue because the most popular alternate route top-level domain, TLD, was .biz, B-I-Z. It was directly in competition with .com. So it was the .com of the alternates. So it was the most used, had the most content on it, had the most people paying for it, and it had been established for, I think at that point, 5 or 6 years, that I believe it was an Australian guy, had been taking care of it. So when in 2000 they came up with, hey, the ICANN said, hey, we're going to use .biz, then the guy said, your function is to make sure that the DNS namespace doesn't get confused and there's no duplication. And I have had .biz for the last 5 years, and it's been successful. I'm maintaining it. So sorry, it's already taken. And ICANN and the Department of Commerce said, well, let me see if we have let me see if we have that. And they went to their list and said, nope, I don't see .biz. So there we go. We're going to use .biz. So basically, they swiped it, and there was no legal recourse, because what are you going to do? Sue the government? The government's the one that said that. So anyway, there were a lot of angry people, but it was a very, I mean, what percentage of the entire planet understands what DNS is? And then from that, what percentage of that cares, and then what percentage of that is going to get all uptight about it. So, you had 1% of 1% of 1% of the people who were really ticked off about this. So they just steamrolled over. And most people didn't even know about that. But there really was a lot of controversy at the time. Now, one of the other thing that was controversial, and this was much bigger, was, so we already talked about this, there were 7 top-level domains, and 90-some% of the content was in .com, and the biggest issue was adult content. For people who had to filter traffic, if you're a library, if you're someone getting federal funds, you are required to filter adult traffic so that kids can't see it. And they said, hey, this just makes sense. Let's make a .adult or a .xxx. We'll require anyone with adult content to use that top-level domain, and then we can just filter it out. Now, Jay, at one point, because he was in charge of our DNS server, if you did anything and put a .xxx at the end, it would automatically resolve to Lakeland's website. I don't know that it does that now, and I'm at home and I can't do that, but it would, you could put in whatever you wanted, .xxx, and it would resolve to just Lakeland's homepage, which I thought was kind of funny. Anyway, they said, hey, because this is the biggest issue, let's get that out of there. And then let's take the .com and let's break it up. If you're going to add 7 more, there should be 5 .com breakdowns, and then an adult section, and then whatever else you want to put, or 4, and then 1 for adult, and then whatever else you want to put. But instead, they basically auctioned it off, and they came up with .biz, .info, which no one has ever used, .name, which I don't think anybody's ever used, .pro, which I can only think of a couple times when I've ever gone to that, .aero, which only the aerospace would use, co-op. My co-op actually does use .coop, and .museum. Now, if you think of what percentage of all of the .coms are actually going to get spread out in these, it's been very few. I mean, how many .biz sites have you been to? Less than 1%? I would almost guarantee it's been less than 1% of the total sites that you've been to have been .biz. And you've probably never been to a .info, name, pro, aero, or and museum and co-op are pretty rare. So that was their fix, but they made a lot of money. And actually, it has in here. So then they went on another round, and they actually added 6 additional ones after that in 2003, hopefully to fix this .com fiasco. And they added Asia Cat for Catalonia. That's Spanish. It's actually the part of Spain that wants to break away. .jobs, .mobi for mobile, .tel for telephone, and .travel. So, that solved all the problems right there, because almost everything you would want to use a .com for is covered by one of those. So no, it did not fix the problem. And then the last round that they went, and okay, so ICANN and IANA are kind of tied together. ICANN's function is supposed to be to make sure the DNS namespace stays organized and is not duplicated. One of the other controversial things they've done is, and this was kind of early on, and they've done it a few times since then, people will squat on a name. So somebody comes up on a high school kid gets recruited to the NBA or the NFL. and people will go out and they will register whatever the guy's name is .com, thinking that the person then, like, well, we would like to buy it. Well, now I paid $10 for it or $20 for it or whatever, and you're gonna have to pay $10,000 for it. So that actually has happened. It's happened a bunch. We'll talk about one instance where it's happening today in corporate America, but ICANN sometimes would step in and say, nope, we're going to take it away from the squatter and give it to the other person for whatever, $10. There are a few other, and one of the examples, and this didn't happen, but the Burger King that we have in Mattoon is the original Burger King. So it predated the corporation. And if our Burger King had BurgerKing.com and had that rightly at the beginning, there were other companies, and this happened several different times. Burger King, the corporation, the national corporation, comes in and could appeal to ICANN and say, when you think of Burger King, you don't think of the Mattoon restaurant, you think of Burger King, the chain. We would like to have BurgerKing.com, and ICANN would strip away, even though you registered it legitimately, we're going to take it away from you because it's in the best interest of everyone that BurgerKing.com would be the national chain. Which, is that fair? Is that in the best interest of everybody? Probably, but it wasn't like, yes, you're going to do it, but you're going to get paid for it. It was just, we're just going to take it away from you. So there were a lot of things about ICANN, and it's semi-international. It actually at one point was underneath the Department of Commerce, and then they divorced themselves from that. I think in 2006 or 2015, at some point they've been distancing themselves from, and they get a lot of money, and there's not a lot of oversight. All of their quarterly meetings are in like Bermuda or something on an island. So they spend a lot of money on themselves, and they rake in a lot of money, and there's not a whole lot of oversight for that. So there's a lot of controversy about ICANN and all the things they do. Now, the latest thing that they did, and this was in, if I get down here, in 2011, they had rules that said you can only have so many URLs. And then in 2011, they eliminated that rule and basically said anybody who wants to have a website can have a website. And I'm trying to find, this is the list of, instead of 14 or 21 or 20, this is the list that we currently have today. I think it's like 1,500 different ones. Oh, okay. So this is kind of funny. So this is the Wikipedia page. It talks about the .sucks domain. There is actually officially a .sucks, which I've thought about, lakelandcollege.sucks, but I haven't registered that yet. One of the issues with this, and they basically said, hey, we're just going to blow the doors open, and if you want to pay for a new top-level domain, you can. And there is a list. I think it was $35,000 it took to. Nope, sorry. The initial price to apply for a new generic TLD is $185,000. The renewal fee is $25,000. So if you want to plop down $185,000, that's the application fee. That was not the price of it. That was the price to apply. And then if nobody objected, you got it. So companies then started coming up with all kinds of things. So .sucks was one of the controversial ones because the people in charge of .sucks, if you're Lakeland College, you want to protect yourself and make sure there's not a Lakeland College .sucks. So you're going to register. You want to register that name. And the .sucks, if you owned the trademark to something and you wanted to register it, it cost you $2,500 to register it. If you're just a normal human being, it costs you $10,000. So they're basically taking advantage of, Pepsi and Coke and NBC and you name it. Anybody who has a trademark Taco Bell and McDonald's, and all those companies are going to, in theory, want to protect their brands. So they're going to want to pay for a .sucks and then squat on it so that it's 404 so that it never goes anywhere. Or it could redirect you to, McDonald's.sucks redirects you to the McDonald's site or something like that. You don't want Taco Bell registering the McDonald's.sucks and has a thing about how awful McDonald's is and then has coupons for Taco Bell. So the whole thing, and .sucks is just one small piece, because the list of, I think there were 1,580 different ones now. So there's 1,500 new domain names that actually popped up. There's the original list. Oh, we got to talk about country codes too. We'll come back to that here in just a second. So I'll get past the country codes. And then this is the list alphabetically, the list of things that people have come up with. So, Audible was registered by Amazon. Books, Read, Music. Amazon grabbed a ton of them. Google grabbed a ton. Microsoft grabbed a ton. At $185,000 a piece, so there's Google took Apple took apps, Amazon. There actually was some controversy about .amazon because there was a group, an Amazon rainforest group that actually originally had Amazon, and ICANN overrode that and gave it to the corporation. Donuts was a company that just facilitated, domain name registry, the portfolio of 242. So they went out and bought a whole bunch of them, hoping to score. Basically, they were a gigantic corporate squatter that went out and just they spent millions of dollars to actually get different ones, thinking that somebody was going to come along and pay for half of them, and then they'd quadruple their money. So there's Best Buy, Blockbuster. Who owns Blockbuster? Yeah, Dish Corporation. But there are a lot of them as you're looking through. How many different companies would want .coffee? Well, obviously nobody yet, because Donut still has that. .credit card. Who's .credit card? Donuts. See, what they're doing is they're trying to squat on things where there'd be a whole bunch of companies that they think would want it. .delivery, .dental. And a lot of these actually did get bought up. Or that they're actually using, and they're making registrar. They're making a piece of the registration on each of these, even if somebody doesn't buy them outright. But you look through here and you keep seeing the same. Donuts has a lot of hits on here. There's HomeSense and Home Goods. That's the TJ Maxx Corporation. .hot is Amazon. I don't know why they need .hot. Google. We're only down in the L's. Still a whole bunch of donuts. The Museum Domain Management Association takes care of .museum. That's interesting. .music, under contention. Amazon tried to get it, I know, at one point. .movie is interesting that Donut still has. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. So there's all of these things. Now, there is a .adult and there is a .xxx that they added. But it is not required that adult sites use them, so you can't use it to filter. So, the thing about all this is companies like Pepsi and Coke are having to squat on a whole bunch of these. They just go through the list, and anything that seems to make sense to them, they're going to want to squat on to make sure. And if they don't buy the whole, they don't have to. Donuts owns .computer, but you want Dell.computer probably to be owned by Dell, so they're going to pay a registrar fee to get Dell.computer. And they're going to have that every time. So it's the registrar that sets the amount. And is that $25 a year? Is that $100 a year? Is that $2,500 a year? So, and basically what ICANN said was, this is going to make the internet much better, much more efficient, because you have so many different things. But think about all the times that you went to a website that actually was one of these extensions. it's so rare. The whole point of it, the whole functional thing that came out of it was these corporations are having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to register all of these different sites to make sure that their competition doesn't register and use it. So it really didn't advance things. 98% of our stuff is still in .com. So, we have 1,500 different top-level domains now, and we're still using .com for almost all of it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. All right, so let's talk about country codes. Every country on the planet was assigned a 2-character country code. So US is US, Mexico is MX, Russia's RU. Those are the ones you'll see a lot. All AU is Australia. You can go through here and you can see all the different countries. The one that is unique, weird, I guess, is Tuvalu. Because it's .tv, they actually sold their rights to use that. Tuvalu is a country in, I believe, the South Pacific. Little island nation, Tuvalu. Polynesia and the Pacific Island. There's going to be a whole section here about. There's got to be a section in here about the economy. Anyway, they sold off the ability to do that for some exorbitant amount of money, where everybody in the country got so much money, and the company that bought it thought that CBS and NBC and ABC and Fox and everybody was going to want a .tv. This was before. This happened before they came out with the mass, so there were only 14 different top-level domains at the time. So they were using .tv. They were kind of the first ones in the game to do this squat option, and nobody really cared. Everybody, all the major TV studios still use their .coms, and the company went bankrupt and sold out to somebody else, who I think the second company might have also gone bankrupt. And I don't know today whether they've gotten it. They might have gotten it back again to where they can use it. I'm not sure how much electricity the country had. Internet was a little iffy. So I'm not sure whether that was a big thing. And I'm not seeing, I should have looked this up before I got on here, but anyway, that was kind of an early bust, kind of like the donuts thing today that they were trying to score on that. But that's really one of the only weird ones. The rest of them are just every country has a country code. Then they can have subdivisions that, just like our U.S. has states, all have subdivisions, and then the states have subdivisions for all of their functionality. So if it's 2 characters, it's a country code. If it's 3 or more, well, that used to be the case. If it's 3 or more, it used to be. And I don't know that we're allowed to have TLDs that are 2 characters. I'm not seeing any. Yeah, I'm seeing. Looks like they're all 3 or more. So 2 characters is a country code. 3 or more would be a top-level domain. And so we went through country codes. We went through alternate routes. We went through ICANN. There was a website at one point called ICANNot.com that actually was just an anti-ICANN site, which was pretty funny. While all the lawsuits were going on, I think that was like 2000 to 2003 or 2004. But anyway, this is the long list of different top-level domains that you can actually have now. These actually have all the country codes mixed into them too. So these are all the ones you possibly could have. And if you're a company and you're trying to protect your brand, there's a lot of different ones you're going to have to go through and you're going to have to actually register with. So it just becomes kind of a pain. All right, so you know what TLDs are, top-level domains. You know what ICANN is and how it functions. IANA is in there as well. The Department of Commerce was partially in there, and they basically relegated everything to that. There has been a push for the UN to actually come into being in control of that. So there's some international body that they actually answer to. But as of now, the ICANN is fairly independent and can make whatever decisions that they want. All right. So as I said, this whole section, it's not in the notes, and you will need to know what TLDs are, and you'll need to understand that. So it was more of a functional understanding standpoint than it was for quizzes or certification. So next one we'll do is IP tools.